All right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. I have got a little post, not draft, a little post combine edition for you here. We'll try and keep it relatively short because your boy's tired. Your boy's tired. I don't know if I technically overslept. Maybe I just slept the proper amount for the first time in a long time. Who's to say? But I slept a lot, and I felt very tired all day. I still do right now, actually. So, with all that said, thank you all for tuning in here. I'm your host, Caleb. You can follow me on the socials at CalebVUA, bottom left-hand corner. Go ahead and search me on X. There we go. I finally said its real name. But really, I mean, the link is down in the description. It's still a Twitter link. I'm not coming off of that. But yeah, go follow me there at CalebVUA. Shoot me a DM if you want to opine in any way. Preferably nice stuff, I suppose. But hey, go wild. Do what you got to do. Anywho, we got a bunch of headlines here, and then we're going to take a look at some players to watch coming out of the Combine. Try to get you out of here in a tight 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm going to get a quick swig of this Gatorade here. Would you believe it, folks? I mean, I'm not buying the 20-ounce Gatorades anymore. This one's a 12. And the only reason I'm doing that is because they replaced my favorite... actually, no. What did they replace? I'm pretty sure they replaced the orange with the blue in there. Orange is my favorite, so obviously I switched to the one that has the orange. I'm pretty sure they replaced the red, actually. And blue, I don't know. I just feel like it's an overrated flavor. I just feel like it's an overrated flavor, folks. So there's just not much I can do about that, unfortunately. But I started buying the 12 ounces instead because they still have the full orange, red, yellow combo in there, it's a classic. Why mess with a classic? Get those stupid blues out of my face, man. Just get out of here with that. Anywho, enough talking about Gatorade here. That's a little bit into too much inside baseball on that. Really just inside Sam's Club if we're being exact about it, but still, we got to keep moving from there. I'm all sorts of itchy today. Eyebrows, nose, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot going on over here. Yeah, your boy's tired. Anywho's, let's talk about the headlines here. We'll try and kind of get through these fairly quickly. But first and foremost, shout out to Jimmy Johnson, who announced his retirement from Fox. I believe that was earlier today, maybe the day before. I don't really know. Either way, a lot of great moments over the years that really kind of solidified me as a football fan. Unfortunately, none that I can bring to mind right now. So you're just going to have to take my word for it. I guess they weren't memorable enough to bring to mind right now. But really just Jimmy Johnson on the whole. I mean, it's the same thing with the Sunday NFL Countdown crew, like the original Sunday NFL Countdown crew. I'm talking about on ESPN, of course, Chris Berman, Mike Ditka, who else was there? Tom Jackson, Chris Carter, Keyshawn Johnson. I think that kind of gets all the bases covered there. That's my Sunday NFL Countdown crew. That's the crew that got me into football, I would say. Just great, hilarious moments. Mike Ditka, underrated. I knew him as a broadcaster and as a coach. I didn't even know he was a monster player until kind of later in my teenage years when I was like, holy shit, he's pretty damn good. Also, Brock Bowers literally just broke his record. Literally, just in the year 2025, broke a record from like the 1960s. So that should tell you just how much of a monster that Mike Ditka was right out of the gate as a player. But I knew him as a broadcaster mostly as a kid. I mean, he was hilarious. Said a lot of off-color jokes, which I always appreciate. Just a hilarious guy. Love Mike Ditka. I put Jimmy Johnson kind of in that same realm where he just goes on there and is entertaining. He's just an entertaining guy, and I appreciate all of his work. Wish him nothing but the best in retirement. It was just about time. You saw some faculties slipping a little bit, as I absolutely did not mean to turn on Siri, but these things happen, I suppose. But with that, shout out to you, Jimmy Johnson. We keep it moving from there. Biggest news from last week came across the timeline there on, I believe it was either Saturday or Sunday. Either way, Deebo Samuel has been traded from the 49ers to the Washington Commies. The red wave gets stronger and stronger. If the CIA was still worth a damn, they'd be doing some counter operations here against the wave of commies that is coming from Washington, D.C., no less. You don't even have to go far on that one, but I digress on that front. Deebo Samuel brings the remainder of his contract. I think this is the last year of it. And gets, for a 5th-round pick, that's pretty much all said and done. Adam Peters gets himself a, maybe not a number 1 wide receiver, but a damn good number 2 behind Terry McLaurin. I really love this move from the Washington. I love this move from both teams' perspective. So, first off, we just might as well talk about the elephant in the room here. Obviously, Adam Peters was just the assistant GM of the 49ers up until last offseason. So him and John Lynch, the relationship there, you're not going to convince me that didn't play a huge factor in how this whole thing got done. Outside of that, though, it doesn't change the fact that this makes a whole lot of sense for both teams. So that contract for Deebo, especially coming off of a down year, really you look at his statistics, he really only had one super dominant year coming back in. I believe it was 2021. He went for like 1,400 yards, rushed for another like 500-600 yards, was unstoppable. Highest yard per carry average, I believe, in his career as well. He was unstoppable in that year. Otherwise, he's been banged up. He's been good when he's in there, but it's not a guarantee that he's going to be in there. And at this point, he plays a physical style of football, a lot like George Kittle, where we're at about the point where it's going to catch up to him, and you're not going to get, if you're expecting a full 17-game slate from Deebo Samuel, you're going to come out disappointed. You're hoping for like 13 games, good production. You're hoping Cliff Kingsbury uses him in an effective way. He's going to have a follow-up performance from last year, obviously, which we'll see. For me, jury's still out on Cliff Kingsbury on that, but gets a good piece here in Deebo Samuel. So I think the 5th-round pick makes a bunch of sense from both sides because the 49ers have to offload cap on one side of this, and that's an albatross of a contract. There's not a whole lot of teams that are trying to take on that contract unless it's a situation like the Commies, which we'll talk about here in just a sec, where they have a lot of cap space. They got a quarterback on a rookie deal. They want to push all their chips into the center of the table. But at the same time, that 5th-round pick comes into play because it's still a risk for this player. It's an albatross of a contract, quite frankly, and it's going to be one of those things where, he could show up and just health completely fall apart. It could be just totally not useful, could be out fairly early on in the year. If all goes about as worse as it possibly could go, or as bad as it could possibly go, as humans generally say and phrase that. But at the same time, that's why a 5th-round pick makes a lot of sense here for him. It's a low-risk, high-reward proposition. The 49ers, the 5th-rounder, maybe you could have gotten the 4th-rounder from someone else, but I feel like the 5th-rounder is about as good as you're going to get in this circumstance. So it makes a lot of sense for both teams. And from a football perspective, I love this from the Commanders' point of view. I understand it from the 49ers' point of view because they've got a big-time quarterback contract to pay, and it's time to inject some youth into that wide receiver core anyways. From the Commies' point of view, this is kind of a missing piece, and it's a complementary piece to what you see from Terry McLaurin. See, Terry runs a lot of downfield routes, is just a man at the point of attack, probably, at the very worst, a top 5 jump ball guy in the entire NFL, maybe top 1, although I put JJ up there for sure with how good that he's, the circus catches that he's made. One-handed catches in double coverage with defenders having hands on the ball. Those types of catches that you're getting from Justin Jefferson. But Terry McLaurin doesn't fall out of the top 5. He's fantastic on that. He runs very good routes downfield and just simply wants it more than the secondary on the other side. I think he's got a bigger want-to factor than any wide receiver in the entire NFL for my money. He gets long plays that have no business being long plays. He's just a dog, absolute dog, but a much more of a downfield threat. Deebo, you can get him going on those, but he's much better and he reaches his full potential when you can use him in the backfield, when you can run him on some screens, just get him the ball on some crossing routes, easy yard after the catch opportunities where if you just put the ball in the right place, he can just do what makes him special and just not go down when players hit him. I could see him adding a lot because it's a very complimentary piece to what Terry McLaurin does. if Cliff Kingsbury can just pull it together, they could be cooking with gas here. I like what they're bringing back, and this is before we even get to the draft and free agency. I'm very interested to see what they do in free agency. Not exactly a deep class at wide receiver in free agency this year, but room to improve for sure. Wide receiver in the draft, I'm interested to see what they do there. Not as deep of a draft class as, say, last season, but still very good. Really good, solid quality at the top, and you could still, if you decide to do so, get something in the first round. Real improvement I'm looking to see is on the offensive line. If you shore up the interior of that offensive line, I think you're sitting pretty going forward here, especially with a young QB. Just because the offensive line played better than expected last year does not mean that we can just stay pat with what we've got. I think you have to continue making a concerted effort to improve. You see what the Lions do with a great offensive line. You saw what the Eagles did last year to the tune of a Super Bowl with a great offensive line, and they've had great offensive lines year after year after year. So I would continue focusing on that in the first round, but still, you add one more wide receiver piece, you're probably set on that front, assuming that Deebo isn't completely injured the whole season, which you have to assume that making this trade. Otherwise, you don't give up assets. It's clearly a risk factor, but that's a reason why it's down to a fifth round pick as well, in addition to that contract. So that's really what I got on that situation. I love the deal for both sides here. I mean, I guess the love is strong for the 49ers on that side of this. But for what the situation is there in San Francisco, with the contracts that they have to offload, and really they're kind of in a bit of a reset mode, if we're being honest with ourselves here, in a lot of facets. Older roster, they got to inject some youth in there, and especially with a new quarterback contract, that's where the savings have to come at this point. I like it. I like it because I think it's about as good of the compensation as they could get on the market, especially getting this thing done before free agency happens. I think is ideal for everyone involved. So I like this move a lot. I think Adam Peters continues to cook at this new Commies GM, and I'm really excited to see what they do in both free agency and the draft. Because even with this Deebo Samuel contract, they got a lot of cap space to spend, and I think they're going to spend it. I think they realize what they have in the building right now with Jaden Daniels, and I think they're going to act accordingly because 3-year window right now. It starts right this second before that 5th-year option kicks in on Jaden Daniels' contract. It would behoove you to spend all the money that you possibly can right this second to put together a contender. We'll see if they do it, but I like this start so far from Adam Peters. I'll just put it that way. We move on from there. That's probably the biggest story of this week. This one I'll hit on just quickly. Saints GM Mickey Loomis indicated at the Combine that they're going to stick with Derek Carr as their starting quarterback in 2025. Don't love that start. I feel like Derek Carr is one of those contracts that I understand why you want to hold on to him right now. You just got to let go, though, man. You just got to let go. It's not going to get any better. It's really not. And it would behoove you to actually not do well next year so that you can kind of position yourself in the draft. Now, if you move up and you take a guy like a Cam Ward or something like that, that's another conversation to have entirely. That could be advantageous to have Derek Carr in there at that point. But I have a hard time seeing it. Now, they did meet with Shedeur Sanders at the draft, which is noteworthy. But that's it. That's all it is. It's just noteworthy. So I don't know. I don't know on that one. It's an inauspicious start. I'll just put it that way for Mickey Loomis in this offseason. The cap is apparently going to go up substantially. I've been hearing that really all offseason. We don't know yet, I don't think. But the whispers are the COVID restrictions on the cap growth have lifted after this past season. I would expect the money to start rolling in because they're still getting big-time ratings every single week because it's the NFL. So that'll have a role in this for sure. I still think if you're the Saints, it would behoove you to lean into the suck as much as possible. Cut who you need to cut, restructure who you need to restructure, specifically Cam Jordan. Everyone else, I say you sell all the loose parts and have a full reset here with a new coaching staff. That's the way I would do it. So far, it doesn't feel like Mickey Loomis is looking that way, but we'll see. We'll see, man. I'm interested to see how this plays out, if for no other reason than I have good friends that are Saints fans, former contributors to this show, in fact. Anywho's, let's keep it moving from there. List of the franchise tag guys so far, it's really only 2. Trey Smith for the Chiefs, pretty much everyone saw that coming. All-pro guard, no way they were letting him walk out the door. Now, they have to make some personnel decisions on top of that, kind of clear up some cap, but there was no way that they're going to let Trey Smith walk out the door. And T. Higgins again, actually, with the Cincinnati Bengals. Did not know the number was going to come at $26 million this year. That's actually still below market value, so that works out perfectly for their cheap asses. And in addition to that, they did cut guard Alex Kappa. Cleared up about $10 million cap, so that immediately goes to T. Higgins. And they still have to figure out an extension for Jamar Chase, which they will figure that out. I don't think they're going to be playing this franchise tag game with Jamar Chase. He's, at the very worst, a top 2 wide receiver in the league. You can have an argument for him or his teammate. And Joe Burrow was the QB on that team. I mean, the farther away we get from that 2019 LSU team, I'll say it every single time this comes up. I mean, the more and more we get away from this, the better and better that team looks. They are right there neck and neck with that 0-1 Miami team right now as far as all-time teams. I mean, just the offenses. Go look it up. It's fucking unreal what was on that offense at LSU in 2019. And go look at those numbers. It showed it. Specifically, Joe Burrow, I'd say probably the greatest season in college football history. And that's, yeah, I don't have to litigate that point. That's my opinion. Other people have other opinions. That go look up the numbers from that year and take into account. LSU was in the best defensive division. I don't care about the numbers. I know the SEC West, the best defensive division in all of college football in 2019, and they put up those numbers with those players, and none of the games were even close. They're right there neck and neck with 0-1 Miami. That's pretty much all. But T. Higgins here. So the $26 million makes a whole lot of sense. They are going to get done Jamar Chase, though. They sign big-time players to those deals. It pains them because they're such virulent cheap asses. I mean, just disgustingly virulent cheap asses. But you have one more year at the very least you're riding out with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins with Joe Burrow as the quarterback. We'll see what happens. If you don't fix the defense and the offensive line for that matter, ain't none of this shit's going to matter. So that's the focus. You bring in Al Golden. What are you going to do personnel-wise? Because that's the real issue. You still have Trey Hendrickson for now. What are you going to do? What are you going to do on that side of the ball? We'll see. We're just going to wait and see on that. Okay, so also we had a, well, this is a whole story here, but after a full insider blow-up between Jordan Schultz and Ian Rappaport at a Starbucks no less, which, if you don't know who Jordan Schultz's dad is, go look it up. That Starbucks bit is kind of hilarious. More than kind of. Most people know who Jordan Schultz's dad is, but we'll just keep it moving from there because it's been regurgitated so many times. Go learn something if you haven't learned something already. The blow-up was about whether or not Tom Brady was recruiting Matt Stafford. So after all that blow-up, obviously Ian Rappaport said that was false. They just both have houses in this Montana skiing community, which rich motherfuckers tend to flock together on that front. So that makes a whole lot of sense. There's probably a little bit of recruiting going on anyways. But Jordan Schultz outright characterized it as Tom Brady went out to the ski resort to recruit Matthew Stafford. Now, that was probably a side quest. They probably had some conversations about that, and there's nothing against the rules with that either because Matt Stafford was given permission to seek a trade partner already, so we can lay that to bed, with that being controversial even. But there was Ian Rappaport. Sometimes he kind of, sometimes he's a little bit of a square in his reporting. Maybe he leans towards the less controversial story than maybe what is more accurate, which he's a good reporter. That's what good reporters do. They don't blow up the situation. Jordan Schultz, And the funniest part of this even is that NFL security got called. I don't think Ian Rappaport was actually the one that called NFL security, but that's the way it was characterized. And since Rappaport didn't call security, I'm 100% on Rappaport's side on this, because I know Rappaport, if he puts a report out there, it's been vetted to death pretty much. If Ian Rappaport tweets it, it is gospel. That shit is happening 99.999% of times. If Ian Rappaport tweets something that it's going to happen, that shit is going to happen, with very, very few exceptions, and those exceptions probably coming early on in his career. Jordan Schultz, the hit rate is still good, but it's not good enough for me to respect your reporting integrity. Jordan Schultz is a little bit story happy. That's what I'm putting out there right now. I'm not saying he doesn't have good sources. I'm saying he's kind of young in this game right now. And I respect the hell out of him, because as Shaq likes to say with Jordan Schultz, and why, him and Shaq have a great respect for each other, specifically Shaq for Jordan Schultz, is, okay, let me just outright say it. His dad was Howard Schultz, one of the founders of Starbucks, a CEO for a long time of Starbucks. Jordan Schultz could have owned, 100 Starbucks locations, been a millionaire, and lived a cushy life where he just didn't have to really do much because of his last name. Instead of that, he decided to go the insider route, just scrounging for stories, networking to death, essentially, to make something of his own, to not ride off the coattails of his dad like some trust fund kid. And for that, I don't hate Jordan Schultz. I like and respect Jordan Schultz because of where he came from and what he chose to do with that background. All that aside, though, he could stand to do some better vetting on some of his stories. That's a fact that if Jordan Schultz is being honest with himself about, he would acknowledge, and that's a problem that's going to bite him in the ass until he gets it fixed. That's the main thing that he should take away from this. None of that matters, though, because Matthew Stafford's coming back to LA for another year. I already spent entirely too much time on that, but it was just fascinating. I love this kind of drama, man. Just drama that doesn't affect me at all, but I can just laugh at from the sidelines. That's the best. That's the good stuff right there. That's the stuff that I live for. But yeah, Matthew Stafford is going to be back with the Rams on a restructured deal. Met with the Rams. Apparently the other teams in the running, that being the Giants, the Raiders most specifically. I would imagine the Titans were lurking there in the background as well, given their QB situation. Offered more money to Matthew Stafford, but it was also the Raiders and the Giants and the Titans. So don't know if those are teams that you want to spend your last year or two with to end off your career. Don't want to go the Montana route. Don't really even want to go the Brett Favre route in his last year with the Vikings. Should have retired after that NFC Championship loss in hindsight, but hindsight's 50-50, as the great philosopher Cam Newton once said in a post-game press conference for the Panthers. So, yeah, I mean, he's coming back to the Rams. I think this is good for the Rams. The Rams have been in some conversations to move up in the draft. Now, without Matthew Stafford as a bargaining chip, that seems less likely. Now, that being said, we already talked about, I mean, this is a year in the draft for projects, I would say, at quarterback. There's no guys in the first round, unless I would say if you're moving up for Cam Ward, Godspeed, soldier, because I feel like he's going to be a stud if he goes to the right spot here. And I think the LA Rams would be very much the right spot. They just have to rein in some of his tendencies, his gunslinger tendencies. You don't have to stop it. You don't have to completely neuter the guy. Just look at Derek Carr to see what the results of that can be. But, just temper it a little bit and keep letting him rip downfield. Let him be the man that he is, and he would be great in LA. Barring that possibility, though, going to the second, third round, now you're in possible, Jackson Dart territory, though after the combine, it's looking more and more like maybe some foolhardy GM at the back of the first round is going to make him a first-round pick. That would not be smart. I don't think Jackson Dart should start from day one. But if you're the Los Angeles Rams, he's still there in the second round when you're picking. Maybe you can move up a little bit in the second round to pick him if you really want to. If Matthew Stafford's staying there for at least another season, maybe 2 seasons at this point, depending on how this next season goes, that's an ideal situation for a Jackson Dart to step into, develop, kind of get his mechanics right, because he's a hell of a talent. He's a hell of a talent. You saw him put on a show at the Combine. He's great athletic measurables, really, really solid arm, just has some tendencies that you want to rein in mechanically, and didn't come from a real kind of pro offense there at Ole Miss. So those factors aside, the raw talent is there. If you could have him sit down for a little bit and not start from day one, I think you can really make him into something. So I think maybe you see the Rams going that route in this upcoming draft. I think that would be the smart way to go. At the very least, take a flyer on a guy and then kind of reevaluate here in a year or two whenever Matthew Stafford eventually retires. That's where I would look at for them. Outside of that, I mean, defense, just keep on building what you got. Great young core. Offensively, dare I say they need receivers? Puka Nacua is still very good. Cooper Kupp has fallen off substantially from a time when they won the Super Bowl, he was a top 5 receiver in the league at the very worst, maybe even the number 1 for a period there. Won the Triple Crown. People forget about that. He's not that player anymore. He's still a good player, but he's not that player anymore. And now, with Deebo Samuel going to Washington, one player for him is off the board. So we'll see how it all works out there. I have a hard time seeing him stay on the Rams just with that salary cap number that he's got going into the next season. But that's all a wait and see at that point. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting offseason for the Rams. They're kind of in a weird in-between spot where they never really hit the full reset button, but they have a good young core on both sides of the ball. They just also have these big-time contracts. I guess specifically at this point, Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford are the ones that are kind of weighing it down. You still have some assets to work with, though, in free agency. So I'm excited to see what the Rams do. I think they have some areas that they can improve on. Depth on the defensive side of the ball, receivers on offense, interior offensive line even. They could stand to continue to improve there, but why not just throw a mid-round draft pick at it? They seem to hit on every single one that they take there on the offensive line, so why even devote assets in free agency to it if you're just going to hit like that on the offensive line? Hey, take a 5th rounder and make him an all-pro. That's what Les Snead has done over and over every single year since he's been the GM of the Rams. But that's all to say. I'm going to be watching the Rams closely this offseason. We'll put a pin in that for now. All right, so we will keep it moving from there. Got some cuts to get to. So the Eagles are releasing cornerback Darius Slay. Obviously, Hail States. If you don't see me on the YouTubes, I'm clanging. I don't really have the I don't have my cowbell handy. Otherwise, I would. But yeah, great Mississippi State football player. I believe him and God, I always forget his fucking name. The defensive tackle there. I always think his name is Jefferson. I don't even know, man. Fletcher Cox. I don't know why the hell I can't remember Fletcher Cox's name. I never can, though. And he's one of the greatest Mississippi State players to come out. But same, I believe same team as Darius Slay. At the very least, I think there was some crossover there. Either way, great tenure with the team, was a really good quarter for a long time, clearly dropped off this past season, and Howie Roseman hit 2 absolute dingers in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean of Super Bowl Pick 6 fame, and it was not a fair catch. Not a fair catch against Minnesota. Refs fucked that up. And I'll stand on that. But that's by the by. That's like a year and a half old at this point. It's old news. So we'll keep moving from there. It makes a lot of sense. The Eagles, especially with having that Jalen Hurts contract, you got to make some hard decisions. And frankly, this is not a particularly tough decision. You had a big cap number and wasn't playing up to that cap number. Is James Bradbury still on the team? I don't think he is. He shouldn't be either. He's at the injured stage of his late career. He's in his 30s. If he's not already cut, he needs to probably get out of there, honestly. And then you just go into the draft, frankly, and then you just replenish there. That's where the shift is. When you're saving on your QB contract, you can spend money at all the other positions. When you're not saving money on the QB contract, you have enough money to spend strategically at big time needs and then backfill in the draft. That's when the rubber meets the road as a GM on the scouting department. That's what you really need to kind of shift resources to when you start paying your quarterback, is to the scouting department, because you got to save everywhere else once your quarterback gets paid. The 49ers are about to have to start doing this right now. Showtime for John Lynch. This is where the great GMs are made, if you can continue nailing draft picks in order to keep your championship window alive. The Patriots did it for a long time. The Rams are kind of showing an ability to do that with what Les Snead has done. The wizardry in the mid-rounds at basically every position. They just hit nothing but bangers in the mid-rounds, which is great value on those contracts as well. So this is where the rubber's going to meet the road for the Eagles. This is, I mean, Howie Roseman's done this for years at this point. This is no shocker on that one. Interested to see where Darius Slay ends up. I don't think it's going to be in the premier corner position like it was before. I know a team that loves experienced cornerbacks in the NFL level, veteran cornerbacks at the NFL level, up there in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Great fan base, great organization. Hey, just putting it out there, Darius. Just putting it out there. We get you on a nice little $5 million one-year contract, put you in there. We'll make a spot for you. I mean, Byron Murphy's got the nickel pretty much locked up. Play on the outside, maybe play number 2. We'll see if Stephon Gilmore comes back for another year. I think there's mutual interest there. Hey, we love us some old corners, man. Come on over. I'd love for you to finish your career in a place where I can root for you, because it's really not been that way for the entirety of the career, going from Detroit over to Philadelphia. So, hey, come on over to the Minnesota Vikings here, Darius Slay. That's my sales pitch to you. Number 2 organization on the NFL PA report card. They were number 1 last year. Need I say more? We'll get to that here in just a bit. Okay. So, already talked about Alex Kappa. Devontae Adams is on the trade block, unsurprisingly, as the Jets are staring down the barrel of a full rebuild, full reset. Just, for me, you don't know me, Devontae Adams, but I care about you. I think you've been a great player for a long time. And really, you're putting together a Hall of Fame resume that it's going to be debatable at this point, because you've had a couple not very great years in a row, but you should be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. Just, please, for me, Devontae, don't follow Aaron Rodgers. You're better than this, man. You're just better than this. I know you're better than this. Go to, like, the Rams. Go to, hell, maybe if we're feeling wild and crazy and we don't want to take a whole lot of money, maybe we go to the Bengals. I wouldn't do that, but catching passes from Joe Burrow sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know if they're going to have the money to do it, but it sounds like a lot of fun. Go someplace with a good, younger quarterback. Houston Texans. Houston Texans would be a great spot for Devontae Adams with what they need and what Devontae Adams would prefer to put a stamp on a Hall of Fame career. Just, Aaron Rodgers is sinking ship. He's got one more year, and he's going to come to find out, if he does come back for another season, that coming back for another season was a mistake. That's going to happen. You can either choose to be a part of that mistake, or you can choose try to put a stamp on your Hall of Fame career. If you go where Aaron Rodgers goes, that's simply not going to happen. It's not an option. You deserve better. You're a better player than this. Go to a place where you can go to the playoffs and put up good numbers doing so, because you deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. I don't know who needs to tell you this, Devontae Adams, but you don't have to stay with your toxic QB1 that's been your QB for a long time. You don't have to go back to the well of former QBs. You're a good enough wide receiver to where you can create chemistry with a solid QB anywhere you go. And you're still good enough to do that. You're not a top 5 receiver anymore, unfortunately. Probably should have stayed with the Packers whenever you decided to get traded to the Raiders. I understand. Again, the same bugaboo that you had coming over to the Jets. You're just following your former QB and haven't stopped to consider that maybe things aren't as sweet as they once were. And maybe finding a new flavor is a little bit better. You're better than following Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. Do not stay on a sinking ship. Choose to float to success. That is my advice to you, Devontae Adams. You can choose to heed it, or you can choose to ignore me. Either way, you're an adult. You can make your own decisions, as I like to say. Okay, so more Rams news. Very Rams heavy show today. Offensive tackle Alaric Jackson. They signed him to a 3-year, $57 million deal. Guarantees not known on that yet. That one's hot off the presses. But I mean, hey, big part of an underrated offensive line for LA. Another one of those mid round picks. This is what Les Snead does. He drafts really good offensive linemen in mid-rounds and then signs them to contracts that are not too terrible because they're very, very good offensive linemen with not a whole lot. You're not having like a Rashawn Slater on the offensive line or a Trent Williams on the offensive line, but you got a whole lot of really, really good players. So you pay them like that. You pay them like that, and you laugh all the way to the bank. Rams know what the hell they're doing, man. They're one of the best run organizations in the entire league. Also, NFLPA report guards, they came out. Go look it up. We simply don't have time to hit on it in today's episode. But some highlights. I'm not going to go through all the grades because that's going to take a while, and I did not have the time to prepare on that. Work has not slowed down. Starting to think it never will. Such is life, I suppose. Some highlights, though. Vikings, still a high-class organization that free agents should be flocking to. They were the number 2 organization this year because the Dolphins ended up being number 1. Stephen Ross apparently invests in his team, does all the things that you would hope a winner would do, just hasn't quite come to winning. There's a certain question of competence in there, I suppose, but as far as providing the necessary tools to win, from a resources standpoint and a treating of the players standpoint, it seems like Stephen Ross is kind of a stand-up guy, at least in the eyes of his players. Now, I'm not going to forget about the old Brian Flores lawsuit kind of lingering out there at the moment. That's still out there. And I wholeheartedly admit that Stephen Ross may just be a very good people pleaser and ultimately might not be the greatest guy in the world. You don't become a billionaire by being a squeaky clean saint. I'll tell you that much. But hey, I mean, seems like he treats the players well. So who am I to judge? The Patriots are shockingly bad. They ranked very, very low. The Crafts their star has fallen substantially from about 5 years ago. I would say people kind of consider them to be the number 1 ownership group. I would say that is not the case anymore. They're an old ownership group, and the legacy ownership group that's going to be taken over for Bob Kraft is looking like a fucking shit show. So many of us do not remember. In fact, I was not alive for this, or at the very least not sentient and not conscious enough to know when it was happening. The Patriots were bad for a long, long time before Bill Belichick got there, and people just forgot about that because Bill Belichick's tenure was so long, so illustrious. But teams are never that far away from that when it's all said and done, especially when you got an aging owner and a legacy ownership group that looks bad. Flat out, they don't look good. Jonathan Kraft looks like a buffoon, quite frankly, and I've seen nothing to convince me otherwise on that. Patriots fans, can't say I feel bad for you, but you might be in for a rough stretch. Mike Vrabel is your only hope. That's it. Mike, your only hope is that Mike Vrabel strong arms the organization into doing the things that you need to do to win. That's it. Mike Vrabel is the only thing standing in the way of utter obscurity. I feel bad for Drake May. I'm just going to put it that way. I feel bad for Drake May. But all outside of that, other highlights of the NFLPA report card, all the teams you would expect are at the bottom, I would say. So, for instance, the Bengals. I think the Chargers are pretty low down there. All the cheap organizations pretty much are just not that good, and they find themselves at the bottom. Cleveland, I think they fall pretty low on the spectrum there as well. So yeah, Chiefs got a little bit better actually. They weren't nearly as bad as last year. Still not great. Still not great. Clark Hunt, I don't know anything about him, frankly. I know he's rich as hell and doesn't spend a whole lot of money on his football team, so might be on that Jerry Jones kick. Who's to say? All right, so that's pretty much the NFLPA report card highlights. You can go look up more. There are I encourage you to look that up, especially for your team, and lambast your organization for the bad things that they did, because that's the way that we get things improved. Again, I say it every year, but I think the NFLPA report card, and making that public and making a big deal out of it, that's maybe the smartest thing that the NFLPA has done in my lifetime, frankly. It's a small thing, but it has wide-reaching sort of implications. It's a direct reflection of what the players feel about the organization, for better or for worse. So if you want players to be attracted to your organization, you simply need to improve those things. You're getting direct feedback from your players. Now, it is anonymous, but you're getting direct feedback from your players through this report card. So it's huge. I love it. I love this NFLPA report card, and I wholeheartedly urge you, go in, look at your team, find what they do badly, and then ridicule them for it, because that's how we make things better. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the headlines here. Now we're going to talk about the Combine a little bit. And I saved a good little 20-minute flex period here, because I don't know how long I'm going to go on this. But we got players to watch, and I just did a quick scroll through, use the powers of my steel trap memory to kind of come up with some names that I think you should watch. Now, I'm going to have to go back and take a look at the Combine results. No, I'm not, actually. I just realized who my favorite freak of the NFL draft is going to be, and I think he's going to be a bit higher pick than the previous ones. I'll just put it that way. I think that guy's going to end up being a first-round pick. I don't know if he was a first-round pick going in. Certainly a first-round pick now. We're going to talk about him here in just a minute. So yeah, nothing changed on the Combine. Recap here. Just some players to watch come out of the Combine, just based on what they did. I think my instincts are right on this one. Wide receiver Matthew Golden, he popped off the screen in that playoff win versus Arizona State. I believe it was. Got like 180 receiving yards. Caught some pro balls, like pro fade balls, like making incredible catches all throughout that one, and getting separation to boot. He ran a 4.29 fast. Really, really fast, and it showed on tape at Texas. He's going to be a first-round pick, and I really like Matthew Golden. I think he's a player that you should watch, and especially if he goes to, like, say, who's to say how far he slips in the first round? Let's say he slips to the Commies at wherever they are in the late 20s there, since they went to the NFC Championship. If he gets Jaden Daniels as his wide receiver, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Matthew Golden ended up being the number 2 receiver on that Commies team by the end of the year, with Deebo Samuel working exclusively out of the slot, exclusively in a tertiary role, where you kind of play him a lot more in the gadget role. Matthew Golden could be a star, I feel like, with his measurables coming out of the draft, especially that 40 time. He's a fascinating prospect. If he goes to the right quarterback, I think he produces immediately. And he might produce immediately anyways, because those catches he was making in the playoff, those were not college catches. Those are legitimate NFL pro catches, pro hands, pro route running. I love Matthew Golden. I love Tet McMillan. I think he's probably my favorite wide receiver in this draft. Matthew Golden probably vaulted himself up to second with just the sample size that I saw, pretty much, in addition to the way that he measured. So I love that. Isaiah Bond, not as much. I love the confidence, but if you say that you're going to break the Combine record in the 40, not his teammate, by the way. I don't know why people were saying that. I guess since he did go to Texas. No crossover between Isaiah Bond and Xavier Worthy. Isaiah Bond was a one-year transfer guy who came over this past offseason from Alabama. So was never a teammate with Xavier Worthy. I don't know why people were saying that. But still, a guy that went to Texas, you should at least show some respect. If you're going to say you got to at least run the 4.2s, this guy ran a 4.41, which is not bad. It's nowhere close to the Combine record of 4.21, though. Like, that's... Whew. Yeah, for whatever reason, the Texas wide receivers had some false hope coming in. Matthew Golden lived up to it. Isaiah Bond, not so much. Not so much. But we keep it moving from there. Wide receiver Dante Thornton. I pronounced his name in my head a million times and still kind of mispronounced it. Dante Thornton. There's an apostrophe in it, but it's not Deontay Thornton. It's just Dante Thornton. Why'd they spell it like that? I don't know. Ask his mom. It's his name, though. It's a very unique name, so I'm okay with it. It's really not that unique. That being said, Dante Thornton ran fast, ran on the 4.3s. Watch the Broncos here. That's the main one that I would watch. I don't think Dante Thornton climbs into the first round. He's probably a mid-round guy, which I think works perfect for what the Broncos are looking for right now. I think still kind of recovering from that Russell Wilson contract. They got one more year in 2025 before they're finally free of the cap ramifications on that. But that being said, a guy like Dante Thornton, college quarterback was Bo Nix up until this last year when he transferred to Tennessee. And Bo Nix loved him. I think Bo Nix spoke very highly of Dante Thornton. I have a very good feeling that Bo Nix is going to get in Sean Payton's ear and say, get Dante Thornton on my team. I want him on my team right this second. And what that looks like, is it a second-round pick? Is it a third-round pick? I don't know. I think the Broncos are the one to watch there, and I think that chemistry, that built-in chemistry with Bo Nix is going to pay dividends. That's a player that you should watch coming out in this draft in Dante Thornton. Running back Bashal Tutton. I didn't really know about this guy at all coming out of Virginia Tech. That's kind of the effect of being on a perpetually bad Virginia Tech team outside of a hiccup, if you can call it a good year, a hiccup in 2023 or 2023 in that season. He ran the fastest 40 of any running back first off. And you go back and look at his numbers. I mean, he tested off the chart, really. I mean, high vertical, really fast 40 time. And like I said, tested off the charts. And you look at his production, really 3 years of starting experience, 2022 through 2024. Got 2,000-yard seasons, had a career high last year, got double-digit touchdowns every single season, and I believe got at least one receiving touchdown in each of those seasons as well. The production matches up with what you're seeing in the testing numbers there. I don't know where he gets drafted. It's insane depth in the running back draft this year. That's another point that we're going to bring up here in just a minute. Bashal Tutton, though, a guy that I did not know about coming in. I think he's going to do really, really well at the next level. And again, all these are situation dependent. That's just the nature of the draft. But you get him behind like a solid offensive line, no clear-cut number one in the backfield. Like, let me think of one that kind of pops to mind here. I mean, if you're the Texans, I wouldn't hate bringing in a guy like Bashal Tutton. That's a good one that I would say. Trying to think outside of that. Patriots. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, they've not really shown a great deal of commitment to him. Bashal Tutton could be a good addition there. Titans, maybe the Jaguars. I don't know. They're weird about those sorts of things. Oh, excuse me. Jaguars with Trent Baalke, they just took a running back in every draft. So I don't know. There's a lot of solid spots for a guy like Bashal Tutton, though. Again, I don't know how high he's going to go. It's an insanely deep draft. But his testing and his production, that's a guy that I want on my team. That's a guy that I want on my team for sure. And the Vikings might be one of those teams in the market for a mid-round running back. So we'll see. Okay, outside of that, this is really a segment for guys that maybe aren't names that you know. Like, I'm not going to say, watch out for Travis Hunter. Watch out for Ashton Genty. No shit. Those were the Heisman finalists. And guys, generally speaking, that are like going to be top 5 picks, probably not going to talk about them. Like, yes, Abdul Carter might be the number 1 overall pick. No, we're not going to talk about him because you already know about him. So that's not really what this segment is for, with the exception of one guy, because one guy did stick out big time on that one. But we'll just keep moving from there. This is my favorite freak of the entire NFL draft because he just tested off the charts. And I need air to breathe to get this guy's combine stats up right this second. So, safety coming out of South Carolina. Nick, I'm going to butcher his name, Emanwari. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Freak. Absolute freak. He measures in at 6'3", 220 pounds. None of the other shit matters. That's just kind of what we're looking at there on his measurables. Testing, 40-yard dash, 4.38 at 6'3", 220 pounds. 4.38 in the 40-yard dash as a giant safety. 1.49 10-yard split, which is also insane. It shows that he was moving, and he got moving fast. Vertical, 43 inches. Highest of any safety, I do believe. Broad jump, 11.6. I believe that was the longest of any safety. Bench press even, just to put a bow on it, he did 20 reps on the bench too. So he's strong as hell. He jumps high as hell. He runs fast as hell. This guy is shades of Kyle Hamilton, and he actually tested better than Kyle Hamilton did. Shorter by an inch. I don't think that inch makes a whole great deal of difference when you're talking about an athletic profile like he's got. He's got good production to back it up. Nick Imanwari is a freak. Absolute freak. He's my favorite physical freak in this entire draft. I don't think anyone really comes close to him for me. He's a guy that like a Cam Chancellor type of build with wheels, like real legitimate wheels that he's got. I'm fascinated to see how he plays. Like I said, I mean, his build is shades of Kyle Hamilton. He just is somehow a better athlete than Kyle Hamilton, which is hard to do. It's going to be, I mean, I'm not saying he's the same player necessarily, but I'm saying if you get him in the right situation with the right coaching, the right veteran mentorship, he could be an all-pro, and he could play a lot like you see Kyle Hamilton play, I think. Bookmark. He's going to be a first-round pick. He solidified that with his combine performance. I am really interested to see where he goes. Really, really interested. I think a team high-key, not even low-key, high-key, like the Cincinnati Bengals, getting a guy like that in your building would be huge. I would help out in a variety of ways on the defensive side of the ball. I think he's going to be a stud. I really do. I think he's an athletic freak, and I think he's going to be a stud. So Nicky Manwari, he is my number one athletic freak, my favorite athletic freak in this draft. Outside of that, up next, running back R.J. Harvey. Very, very much like Jaylen Warren. With the build/burst combo that he has. So it's like 5'8". I want to say it's like a 220-pound build, essentially. He's a thick boy. He's a thick boy. He looks like a thick boy coming off the blocks. He doesn't look like he should run as fast as he does, but he ran like a 4.4, like almost broke into the 4.3s, and he could do that still at the pro day. I really like this kid, and he put up huge numbers in college, obviously. If you're a running back in that Gus Malzahn offense, just cash money, bring it to the bank. Every running back that's been in that offense has just had consistent and unending profit. I'll just put it that way. He put up huge numbers in college, that's all to say. So it's not going to translate to the NFL, at least from that perspective. But with the build, with the vision that he showed, with the burst, I really, really like this kid. He, again, kind of strikes me as like a third, maybe fourth round pick type of guy. Maybe he climbs into the second. I think he's a guy that ends up starting at some point during the season this next year. And if he doesn't start during the season, he's going to take significant reps throughout the course of the year and then eventually usurp the starter or become equal partner in that backfield. You're not going to keep R.J. Harvey off the field, I don't think, is the main point of all this. It's just a matter of where he goes when it's all said and done. I really like R.J. Harvey. Offensive tackle Will Campbell. Now, this is the lone exception I made. Will Campbell's going to be a top 5 pick. At the very worst, he's going to be a top 10 pick. I don't think he falls out of the top 5, quite frankly. This segment's not really for top picks, but this guy put up like Trent Williams measurables, like 4.98, 40 time. I think a little bit smaller than Trent Williams, but like 6'5", 319, runs a 4.98, hit a top speed of over 20 miles an hour, which is faster than any offensive lineman in the entire draft. Put up huge numbers on the bench as well. I mean, he's a freak. I don't know if I'm more sure about any prospect in this draft on the offensive line than I am about Will Campbell's. Okay, yeah, sorry. Just saw a headline, not talking about that for sure. But yeah, Will Campbell is a freak, absolute freak. I love. Ooh, I think he's going to be a stud. I love his demeanor. I mean, it shows up on the tape too. I mean, he didn't give up sack all year. So it translates on the football field. Will Campbell's just a plug and play stud left tackle from day one. You draft him and then you laugh your way all the way to the bank. Number one offensive lineman for sure in this draft. Just insane the offensive lineman they're making. Armand Membu, another offensive, like a first round offensive lineman there. He ran a 4.91 to lead the pack in the offensive lineman category. They're just not making them like they used to, man. There's a lot of big boys running sub 540s, and it's scary. It's a scary time. That being said, we'll keep it moving from there. Really just the running back class in general. I've already talked about like 2 or 3 of them at this point. Running back in general is great. Like, it's not good, it's great. I mean, the depth is insane. Really insane. I mean, you're getting like possible starters in the 5th round, 6th round, maybe even the 7th round. You might get like an Isaiah Pacheco type of pop here from like maybe a Cam Skattebo. That's one that you should be worried about. Cam Skattebo, 39.5-inch vertical, so that's good, shows explosiveness. Didn't run the 40 very conspicuously, and this is a guy that we had speed concerns about. That's one, for better or for worse, you got to run the 40, kid. I mean, he's got to run it at his pro day. He has got to run the 40 at his pro day. Otherwise, he's just going to be straight up just crossed off of people's draft boards because clearly you are hiding something in the speed category. So you got to face the music on that one at some point. I still think Cam Skattebo, even if he drops to the 6th, 7th round, I don't care when Cam Skattebo goes. That dude's a football player. I don't care what his measurables are, his 40 time. That dude's a football player. He's a nasty football player, and he will find his way into the starting lineup somewhere. Mark my words, it's going to happen somewhere, and he's going to be a really good running back for a long time because that kid's just got it. I don't give a fuck what the measurables are. That kid's just got it. It's not a Toby Gerhart type of situation. He's got short area quickness. He's got balance at contact. He's got a way of getting through tackles. He's not going to get through all the tackles that he got through in college. Make no mistake about it. He's going to break tackles, though. He's going to get extra yards. He's going to play relentlessly. That's a guy that will succeed no matter where he is drafted. So Cam Skattebo definitely a guy to watch. Just not a guy that tested very well, or really tested at all in the 40 time. Damian Martinez in particular. My apologies to you. Ran a 4.51 in the 40. Serviceable. We can work with that, especially at 230 pounds. Really good short area quickness that I saw in spurts on some cut-ups on Twitter, which are obviously selective. But, hey, Damian Martinez, I still don't think he goes in, like, top 3 rounds. But still a guy that I think could get some big-time backfield reps throughout the course of the 2025 football season if he goes to the right spot. So, my apologies to Damian Martinez. I've cooled off of my criticism of you after you tested so well at the Combine. But the running back class in general is just, if ever there was a year to need a running back, if you're an NFL team, this is the year. You could probably draft 2 of them, frankly. I mean, you could draft one in the 3rd round. You could turn around, draft one in the 6th round if you really want to get your entire backfield spoken for right off the bat. I mean, it's just that loaded at running back right now. And I'm interested to see how many go in this draft because we could see a whole lot of running backs go. I mean, we're at least going to see one go in the 1st round. We could see a couple go in the 1st round. Trevion Henderson's kind of flirting with it. I think he ran a 4.41. Has that, I mean, was a stud from day one at Ohio State. I don't care who was blocking in front of him offensive line-wise. From the time he came in as a true freshman, he was a stud immediately, and he does some stuff out of the backfield that I think is going to put him into the 1st round, maybe just later on in that 1st round. But there's just insane depth, insane quality from top to bottom. So I'm interested to see what happens there. Even more depth than last year, and Bucky Irving went in the 5th round. The overall quality is better than last year. That's an absolute stone cold fact. Shamar Stewart, defensive end out of Texas A&M. He just, look, man. Here's how this is going to go with Shamar Stewart. Now, preface this all by saying he basically had identical numbers to Myles Garrett. Every measurable, the 40 time, the vertical time, the broad jump, all that, he tested off the charts. Anyone who was following the scuttlebutt coming into the combine knew that Shamar Stewart was going to test off the charts. He had not a whole lot of productivity in college. The productivity in college was not the same as Myles Garrett. We'll just put it that way. Same school, same measurables, definitely not the same productivity. Myles Garrett had him on that by a mile. So what that tells me is we're looking at a Barkevious Mingo situation. You may remember he went top 5, went to the Cleveland Browns, and ultimately, as a result, spent some time on special teams, bounced around, and ultimately didn't stick around in the league for all that long. So that's one of those players. Either he's going to go in the first round, I would say. I think that's, with measurables like that, you're going to go in the first round. That's going to happen. Someone's either going to look like an absolute genius for picking up Shamar Stewart, or every single member of the team is going to get fired. That's from GM to coaching staff. Everyone's getting fired if he goes to the wrong spot. It makes him a fascinating player in the draft, because I'd say if he goes like the Carolina Panthers, bad news bears, it's all going to come crumbling down. Everything is going to come crumbling to the ground. That being said, if he goes to a place like the Philadelphia Eagles, you might be looking at a perennial All-Pro here in the next 2-3 years if he can get some good coaching on that defensive line. One of the most situation-dependent, wildly fluctuating possible outcomes here of any player in this draft, which makes him fascinating, if nothing else. A player to watch. If you root for a bad team, though, you do not want your team to draft Shamar Stewart. That's the canary in the coal mine if they draft Shamar Stewart, because that's not a good hit rate for bad teams. I've seen this archetype dozens upon dozens of times in my short career of watching football. You know, it's been since I was 12, so 17 years of watching football. This mold doesn't work out unless you go to a really good team. That's the only way this works out. And unfortunately, this mold tends to get drafted highly, so it's usually not how it does work out. So either way, a player to watch. That's all we're saying, just players to watch. And last one I got here on the list, Gunnar Helm sprained his ankle on a false start in the 40-yard dash. You saw him turn the ankle. If you've ever turned an ankle in such a fashion where you're basically just idling down pretty much. You're just trying to, keep your feet, slow down, and then get back to starting block. You're not really paying attention where the feet go. His ankle turns. Immediate shivers through the body. If you've ever experienced that before, it's just, you never know if or when it's going to happen. When it does, it hurts like a son of a bitch. He does that on the first false start, goes on, still runs a 4.84 in the 40-yard dash. Interested to see what he runs at the pro day, because I think it's going to be faster than that, because he ran it on a sprained ankle. And Gunnar Helm is a guy that maybe it's just because he made big plays in the playoffs, scored that touchdown in overtime to keep that thing alive on fourth down. Also lit up Mississippi State. I mean, set the defense on fire. I mean, everyone did, but Gunnar Helm, I remember him specifically lighting the Mississippi State defense on fire. I think he's got some stuff there, man. I mean, he was the go-to target at times for Quinn Ewers there at Texas whenever he was there, whenever they were playing together. I like Gunnar Helm, maybe not as a starter right away, but as a number 2 tight end. I would love to see him go to a spot like, say, the San Francisco 49ers. I think he blocks really, really well, and he would fit in well. Another tight end, which I didn't mention, Harold Fannin, didn't run particularly fast, but is very, very good on the move as a blocker. 49ers are a place that I would love to see him go to, because I think he could be a stud in that Kyle Shanahan offense. All it's going to take for Harold Fannin is a creative offensive mind, and it's cancel Christmas. He's going to make whatever offense he goes to better. The 4.71 is going to preclude him from any sort of wide receiver duties, I would say, but he's a hybrid. That he's just a playmaker. He's a football player. He's not a Taysom Hill type, but Deebo Samuel, not an unfair comp there. I'd say Deebo's a little bit faster, but not an unfair comp there as far as what he does for your offense, which Deebo Samuel going out the door. Harold Fannin probably not going in the first round. You could connect some dots there. But yeah, also great tight end class. I mean, we're talking, Jake Brenningstool is an underrated guy. Gunnar Helm, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, I believe, Michigan tight end coming out. He tested very well at the combine. If you're in the market for a running back or a tight end, you are in luck this year because we got them aplenty. Also, pretty solid offensive line draft at the very least at the top. But hour 4 minutes, I think that's a good time to cut it off. That's pretty much the players that I'm looking at. Nicky Manwari, remember the name. I think if he goes to the right situation, if he goes to a solid defensive staff, like if he gets drafted by the Eagles with Vic Fangio playing next to C.J. Gardner-Johnson, now they don't need him. Reed Blankenship's doing a hell of a job. He'd probably be the heir apparent to C.J. Gardner-Johnson because C.J. Gardner-Johnson's getting up there in the years, reeling in the years, stowing away the time, as they say. But if he goes to the Eagles, he's going to find his way into the lineup eventually, and it's going to be cancel Christmas. Cancel Christmas for that entire division, frankly. That's a name to watch. If he goes to the right situation, he's going to be an all-pro. He had good production in college, is a physical freak. He goes to the right situation, he will be a stud. Make no mistake about it. He will be a name that you remember for a long time if he goes to the right place. Don't let him go to the Chiefs. Don't let him go to the Chiefs with Steve Spagnuolo and that defense over there. We'll see. I don't think he lasts all the way to 31, but don't let him go. Don't let him go. That's all I'm saying. All right, so that is all we got for today's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this podcast. I appreciate you. We do this thing once a week, every Tuesday, coming out bright and early at midnight every single day, every single Tuesday of every week throughout the offseason. We're back to twice a week during the regular season. For college football, NFL, all that good stuff. I mean, it's the greatest time of the year. I can't stop fucking itching my nose. It's the worst. But I digress on that front. If you enjoyed, subscribe, leave a like, rate, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Wherever you're listening to it, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, any of those places, just go ahead, hit subscribe, share with a friend, help me grow this thing a little bit, please, and thank you. Follow me on the socials, at Caleb V. UA on the Twitters. Shoot me a DM there if you want to get in contact with the show. Outside of that, hit the email unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com as well. With all of that said, thank you so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. As always, I have got no clue what I am talking about. However, one thing I learned this week, and I'm sure hoping that I did not say this one last week. I don't think I did, but we're going to find out. Botswana. Famously known, unfortunately, and kind of erroneously, well, not erroneously, but much more under control at this point, known for the AIDS epidemic. Obviously, they are thriving at this point. Their literacy rate actually blows the United States out of the water. 88% of their population is literate compared to 79% of the U.S. Our union is slowly decaying before our very eyes. And, on that happy note, I'm going to go edit this thing, and I will talk to you next Tuesday. Who knows what we'll talk about, man? Probably looking at free agency coming up. I don't know. Who's to say? Probably a lot of franchise tags, but until then, I'm going to go edit this thing. I will talk to y'all on the morrow. See ya. Enjoy your week. Bye-bye.